I'm Veronica Carey. I am the chair of the Board of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the College of Nursing and Health Professions. And Abby, being one of our members of the board, has each one of the members has an opportunity to look at whether it be health inequities or health disparities or social justice issues, anti-racism, ableism, LGBTQIA+ topics. So the realm is very eclectic and diverse and always seeks inclusion. So I celebrate an opportunity today to have this conversation. I'm glad that everyone is here. This is being recorded, as you can see. So once we have the link, please feel free to share it. It'll also appear on our Drexel YouTube channel, so you can always direct persons there. If you have individuals that are outside of Drexel's scope, they still have an opportunity to click in and see the recording. So I'm looking forward to this. So Abby, thank you so much for being the curator of today's event. I'm eager to learn from this group. The panelists are just phenomenal. So I'm eager to learn from each and every one of you. And at that point, I just say welcome and to everyone who is present today. And Abby, you're on mute.
Thank you, Dr. Carey, for that introduction. And yeah, so I really thought this was a really great topic. I feel like, a lot of us, this is a very sensitive subject. And I definitely am so happy to have these panelists speak. So the first person speaking will be Dr. How do you say your last name? I'm sorry, because I keep calling you Catherine.
Yeah, Catherine's good. Dr. Catherine Dubayou.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Catherine. So yes, she will start off the presentation. And it's all yours.
So hello, everyone. First, I'm just going to make sure to share my screen. All right, so just a little bit about myself so you know where I'm coming from. So I work out of the counseling center and I'm a psychologist there. So the part that I'm going to be sharing here is about definitions, some statistics, and also how to support survivors of sexual assault and also provide you with a couple resources. Okay, oops. All right, so there's several definitions with regards to sexual assault, but in essence, what it all comes down to is it's the absence of consent. Oops, sorry, I'm having some technological issues, so bear with me for a second. So sexual assault basically occurs when there is sexual contact or behavior that is engaged in without consent of the other person, or when the other person is unable to consent due to being intoxicated or incapacitated. It's also defined by the FBI as an offense that meets the definition of rape, fondling, incest, or statutory rape. It's also important, as you know, we are in this more modern world with technology, that sexual violence can also occur not only in person, but also online or through technology, such as posting or sharing sexual pictures of someone without their consent or non-consensual sexting. The activity may include physical force, violence, threat, intimidation, ignoring the objection of the other person, causing the other person's intoxication or incapacitation through the use of drugs or alcohol, or also taking advantage of the other person's intoxication, including voluntary intoxication. So perpetrators may use emotional coercion, psychological force, or manipulation to coerce a victim into non-consensual sex. Some perpetrators will use threats to force a victim to comply, such as threatening to hurt the victim or their family or other intimidation strategies. So in terms of statistics, so there's a lot of statistics out there. I took the statistics that were collected from RAINN, and RAINN, it's spelled R-A-I-N-N, stands for Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. It is the nation's largest anti-sexual violence organization. So there's no, again, single source of data that provides a complete picture of the crime, and RAINN uses the most reliable source of statistics for each topic. The primary source is NCVS, which is the National Crime Victimization Survey, which is conducted by the Justice Department. Other sources include the Justice Department studies, the Department of Health and Human Services, and other government and academic sources. So the majority of sexual assaults are committed to victims under the age of 30. As you noticed on this little picture there, 54% of women between the ages of 18 and 34 are the main victims, and 1 out of every 6 women has been the victim of an attempted or completed rape. Those ages 65 and older are 92% less likely than the 12 to 24 years old to be a victim of rape or sexual assault, and 83% less likely than those who are in the age range of 25 to 49 years old. Again, you know, those numbers speak for themselves. You know, younger women are at higher risk. 82% of all juvenile victims are female, and 90% of adult rape victims are female. Females aged 16 to 19 are 4 times more likely than the general population to be victims of rape, attempted rape, or sexual assaults. I'm going to talk a little bit about statistics on campus. So sexual violence on campus is pervasive. 13% of all students experience rape or sexual assault through physical force, violence, or incapacitation. And that is among all graduate and undergraduate students. So women aged 18 to 24 who are college students are 3 times more likely than women in a general population to experience sexual violence, and females within that same age range who are not enrolled in college, I think that's important to note, are 4 times more likely. So there is a slight protective factor of being a college student. Now the trend is different with regards to male college students are 5 times more likely than their peers within the same age range who are non-students to be sexually assaulted or raped. I don't know, you know, the reason behind that, but I thought this was a really shocking number. So among those, you know, there's some numbers between the grad students and undergraduate students. So for graduate students, we're talking about 9.7% of females and 2.5% of males who experience sexual violence. And for undergraduate students, the numbers are much higher. It's 26.4% of females and 6.8% of males who experience sexual violence through physical force, again, violence or incapacitation. Another population at risk are sexual minorities. So those numbers are also really high. 21% of transgender, genderqueer, non-conforming, otherwise called TGQN college students have been sexually assaulted compared to 18% of non-transgender, genderqueer, non-conforming, and 4% of transgender, genderqueer, non-conforming males. Another interesting data as well is that among college women, 9 out of 10 victims are actually survivors, know their offenders, and 80% of cases go unreported. Within that range also of cases that are reported, among female students, 20% report, but amongst female non-students, 32% report. So there is something about the college population where women have a harder time reporting sexual crime. So the reasons that are cited are 26% believe it was a personal matter, like in terms of not reporting, 20% fear reprisal, 12% believe it was not important enough to report, 10% did not want the perpetrator to get in trouble, 9% believe police would not or could not do anything to help, and 4% reported but did not report to the police. So that could be reported to family or a therapist or another entity. So I thought it was important to talk a little bit about how to provide support to a victim of sexual violence. So it's not always easy to know what to say when someone tells you they've been sexually assaulted, especially when that person is a family member, a friend, or a loved one. So consider some of the following ways of showing support. One, and the most important one, is to listen. Communicate without judgment. It's not your place to identify what type of crime was committed, whether it was or it was not a sexual assault, whether it was rape or not. You just need to be able to communicate that you're listening and being there. Being there is also really important because the survivor may need to seek medical attention or plans to report, and you want to be there in order to support whatever they need in order to get some assistance. So your presence really can offer the support they need. Offer support, encourage the survivor to get support. At the same time, you have to be really mindful about not pressuring someone to report if they're not ready to do that. A person who's been a victim of a trauma, whether it's sexual violence or any other trauma, has been forced, has been pressured. So the last thing you want to do is take that power again away from them by pressuring them. So be there to support. You can, provide some recommendation, but just be patient in terms of when to like how to support them in a way that fits with where they are at in terms of reporting. So realize really that they only can make the decision to get the help. So again, be patient. Remember that there is also no timetable for recovering from trauma. Avoid putting pressure on them to engage in activities that they're not ready to do yet. And encourage self-care. So encourage self-care. It's important after someone has gone through, a traumatic violence, to help them take care of their basic needs, to feed themselves, to sleep, to not isolate. It's important to get back to a particular routine of good self-care, but it's also really important for you, if you're being of support to someone who's been through a traumatic situation, to also take care of yourself. You don't want to tell the person that what they're saying is too much for you, or that it's just like you can't hear more of it. Do get your own support from other people. You also don't want to make them feel like they're too much. Validate their emotions. There is no right or wrong way of experiencing emotions after such traumatic situation. Then finally, here are some resources. I talked about RAIN. Again, that stands for Rape, Abuse and Incest National Network. Their website is fantastic. There's a ton of resources. They have 24 hours, 7 days a week chat and online resources. There's also what's called One in Six, which is linked specifically for men and boys who have experienced sexual trauma. So again, this is a very comprehensive website. Then locally, we have WAR, which stands for Women Organized Against Rape. It's based in Philadelphia. Similarly, they have a ton of resources, and they also have counselors. And then finally, we're here at Drexel, so I do want to put a plug in for the Counseling Center. We offer free and confidential treatment. You have the number on your screen. Just know that unlike some other parties who get involved in helping to support survivor of sexual assault, for mental health counselor, an individual's conversations with university counselors will not be disclosed to anyone else in the university. We are bound by confidentiality. The only exception to that rule is if the person was in danger or imminent danger of hurting themselves or hurting someone else. Then we'd have to break confidentiality, but it's really just to make sure they're safe and to provide the proper support. So I'm going to now pass the baton on to Dr. Min-Soon Lee, who's going to be talking about the consequences of sexual assault.
Okay, so I'm going to share my slides. Hi everyone. I'm Min-Soon, a psychologist at Drexel University Counseling Center. I'm going to talk about the psychological and neurobiological impact of sexual assault. Sexual assault is very often an experience of trauma, and trauma has a neurobiological impact, which means it affects our brains and our nervous systems. So to understand the range of reactions victim might exhibit, like when they are sexually violated and attacked, it is essential to understand the neurobiology of traumatic event, both at the time they occur and in recurring them later. I'm trying to move the next slide. Okay. So I think many of us heard sexual assault victims say things like, I just froze, or I just lying there until it ended, or I didn't know what to do. I didn't feel like I could do anything. These are very typical reactions, when people experience something frightening and overwhelming threat. When we experience trauma, it can change brain functioning in many ways. And the most important changes seem to occur in 3 areas of our brain: prefrontal cortex, anterior cingulate cortex, and amygdala. The prefrontal cortex, which is located near the top of our head, is called the thinking center because it is responsible for rational thinking, problem solving, and planning. The anterior cingulate cortex is located next to the thinking center, although it's a little deeper inside your brain. This area is called the emotion regulation center and help us to manage our emotion without being overwhelmed by them. The amygdala, a tiny brain structure deep inside our brain, is called the fear center because its primary job is to detect danger and threat, and if present, produce fear in us. When this area is activated, we feel afraid, reactive, and vigilant. So when we face traumatic event, the prefrontal cortex and ACC areas of our brain are significantly underactivated, whereas the fear center becomes overactivated. And once you feel fear, the brain's defense circuitry is activated and a cascade of stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol are released. Once activated, the defense circuitry rapidly takes control of brain functioning and activates a survival mode, generating the automatic reflexive reactions, including the well-known fight, flight, or freeze responses. At this moment, the abilities to think, plan, and reason are dramatically impaired. You don't have the capacity to make a rational assessment of the situation, like when you are in a moment of dread or terror. When you lose like executive functioning, this impairs not only planning and decision-making, but also affects the brain's capacity to organize experience into logical sequences. And this helps like explain why many victims don't remember aspects of the event or have blanks or inconsistency in their memory. It also explains why it's not a reasonable request to ask a victim to account for the decisions they made, like around a traumatic sexual assault. The survival mode shifts a person into a state of vigilance for incoming attacks as the brain keeps scanning the environment to assess for danger while seeking out like possibility for escape. So if there are any possibilities for escape, like you will fight or flight. However, if you feel inescapable fear, the only option in dealing with dangerous predators is freezing. The extreme fear triggers the cerebellum to make the freezing response. Actually, like freezing responses, not the fight or flight responses, are the most common reactions among the female sexual assault victims. Then why? Why the fear-evoked freezing is so common? Because this freeze response is not like logical or planned. It's a reflex on instinct and a physiological reaction that's triggered by high stress situations. Even if we wanted to scream or yell or kick, our brain ensures that our bodies are frozen because for millions of years of evolution, like freezing had a survival value. Like it's incredibly difficult to override our brain and body's natural response, like in the moment of fear. So when you can see, like in this slide, like when we are not in a danger or a threat and in a normal social engagement, you are mindful and have joy, compassion, and curiosity, as in the bottom green area shows. In a threatening situation, however, the fight or flight stress reactions occur with the sympathetic nervous system being activated, particularly when our brain decides that we can handle the situation with those responses. However, like when the escape seems impossible and the outcome of an assault unavoidable, then extreme survival reflexes will take over. These extreme responses include dissociation, like numbness and temporary paralysis and collapsed immobility, like fainting. All these responses can result from extreme fear and perception of defeat. In the context of sexual assault, those responses may appear to an observer that the victim did not resist the assault at all. And this is why many victims who responded with these freeze responses often feel shame and confusion and blame themselves for failing to resist. However, it's important to remember that in the face of serious threat, not fighting back or not saying no is not a form of consent or participation in a sexual act. It's actually our brain's most desperate attempt to survive. The freezing serves a purpose, so don't beat you up over it if you engage in freeze response during the assault. Then, is there anything we can do to get out of the freeze response? When you are stuck in the freeze responses and want to break out the freeze response, one of effective way is to receive defense training and practice what you're going to do, like in case you face a serious threat. Repetitive training can replace reflexes. For example, they are teaching young girls how to avoid sexual assault. And one of the most important things they teach is just how to shout no, how to say that out loudly. Once you keep practicing, then the moment of danger, you will be able to draw upon that training. And instead of freezing up, scream no at someone, and that would deter an attacker a lot of the time. Okay, victims may experience the impact of sexual assault physically and psychologically, over both the short and long term. Some of the common experience and emotions encountered in victims of sexual assault include flashback, nightmare, anger and anxiety, hypervigilance, and sense of shame, absolutely. The sexualized nature of the violation of sexual assault adds a particularly traumatic aspect to the experience. When the victim knows the offender, especially a person the woman believes should be trustworthy and safe, and who she never believed would violate her, her sense of betrayal is a profound element of the trauma she experiences. This compounds her sense of shame and self-shame, along with her reluctance to disclose what happened, all of which increased trauma. Women who have been sexually assaulted are more than twice as likely as men victims to develop PTSD, with PTSD symptoms lasting up to 4 times longer. Shame, self-blame, and social isolation create a significant barrier to receiving much needed social support. Then how can we help the victims? Catherine already mentioned, it's important, not to be judgmental. Victims basically need empathy. They need just someone to just listen to them. So being compassionate toward yourself and others is very important. Also, encouraging counseling is definitely something you can do. So with trauma work, the victims will be really best off, working with the therapist. Personally, I believe that real growth and healing is possible. I hope that the victims can give themselves a little credit for taking the time to improve themselves. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. And we're gonna go to Amy.
Hi, how are you? Good afternoon, everyone. Abby, thank you for asking me to participate in this. I am the Victim Services Coordinator here at Drexel University's Department of Public Safety. I'm just going to kind of give you just an overview of basically what I do on campus. I do not have a slide presentation. If you are a victim or you believe you are a victim of a crime, you are highly encouraged to contact Drexel University Police Department at 215-895-2222. That way we can discuss your situation and arrange either a virtual meeting or in-person meeting just to go over some of the resources that would be available to you on campus. Obviously, each situation is unique. So what we'll do is we'll listen to you, excuse me, answer your questions and assist you in understanding what options are available to best meet your needs. Some victims may be eligible for a compensation through the Victims Compensation Assistance Program, also known as VCAP. If you're eligible, I will be able to help you file for that claim for some sort of reimbursement. Another huge thing that we like is that if you are a victim of any crime, to preserve as much evidence as possible. Document as much as you can about the assault, about the perpetrator. Preserve any and all electronic communications related to the crime if you have any. Text messages, email, social media messages, photographs. If you specifically are a victim of a sexual assault, obviously please try to seek medical attention immediately. You do not have to report to police to get medical assistance. You can come to Drexel University, our department at 3219 Arch Street, and someone can transport you down to the Philadelphia Sexual Assault Response Center, and that's located at 300 Hunting Park Avenue. There you can get a forensic medical evaluation, document your injuries, have photographs taken. There's pregnancy prevention, sexually transmitted infection prevention, HIV prevention, along with follow-up care. And that is if whether or not you choose to report to police or not, you are entitled to these services. That's just something that I can follow up if anybody else has questions regarding that. If it is part of sexual violence, obviously, and I'm going to stress again to try and seek medical attention immediately. If at all possible, do not bathe or brush your teeth, depending on the circumstances of the assault. Try not to wash or discard any clothing. And try not to clean or remove anything from the scene of the assault, if at all possible. Obviously, if you're in control of that scene. Any Drexel student or employee who has been the victim or a witness to a crime is eligible for these victim services. So we ask you to reach out and have any questions. We'll be more than happy to answer for you. I'm not going to go too much into the whole core process because I don't think it's necessary at this time. But Abby, I'm just going to turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy, for that. So what I decided to do was to have all the speakers talk. And if anyone had any questions, you can type it in the chat. If it's something that's a little bit too personal and you don't feel comfortable sharing, what you can do is reach out to one of the speakers. I can provide their email if you have something particular to your situation or any questions you have. So this is your time to raise your hand and you can ask your question.
I guess maybe I'll take a little liberty here while others may be deciding what to ask. So first of all, thank you to all three of you, because as you were talking, even though it's recorded, I was still writing down and jotting down some notes. So Catherine, Minson, and Amy, thank you so much. One of the things that I wanted to address, and I don't know if this is my ignorance of the topic, right? And this is why I was so happy that Abby was having this opportunity so I can gain more knowledge. So I appreciated all the research aspects, and then Amy in terms of the how to or what to focus when you were presenting. So Catherine, going back to your presentation, I kind of have questions of each one of you. And again, if I'm taking up too much time, someone else can raise their hand and I'll stop and you guys can interject. But when you were speaking, Catherine, it just made me think about, I am a visual learner, right, as my strategy for how I retain information. And I wonder if there are students who are defining what they're experiencing and I would say poo-pooing, right? Putting, oh, that couldn't come under sexual assault. That couldn't come under, I was at a party and someone fondled my behind. You know, that can't possibly come under. So I wonder if there is, you know, we have a lot of resources here at Drexel. Have we ever explored sort of a simulation or a virtual reality experience so that student, maybe as a first year student, and again, can also be ongoing, to kind of know that those types of experiences absolutely come under what we're talking about today? Is that a resource that we've used, or do you think that would be a helpful resource?
I'm not aware of that resource. I think it all falls under education, really, which is also part of what we're trying to do today, is to try to get some definitions. So I think that would be something that could be really helpful for freshman students, just part of their orientation, for instance. But I do know anecdotally from, working with many students that there's a lot of students who are just not realizing that what they actually experienced was a sexual assault. And it really takes time to be able to, also part of what, Dr. Lee was talking about is the part where, there is some, the freeze response, and there's a part where parts of the experience has been kind of repressed, and then things kind of come to the surface, and in conversation, that's why it's also so important to share experiences where we're able to come up with a vocabulary and also take the blame away, because that's also a part of that. So there's multiple elements I think that play a role in this, but yeah, I think it comes first with education. Certainly. Absolutely. I'm not sure if there's anything you want to add to that, Minson. Maybe not.
Right. All right. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And then Dr. Lee, when you were speaking, so I'm an associate clinical professor within counseling and family therapy. So I was very in tune with all of your presentations in terms of the trauma and the neurobiological elements, and I teach psychiatric rehabilitation within my department. So I think that when you were both presenting, Catherine and Dr. Lee, I think what was happening was that I was kind of relating it to other traumatic experiences that happen on campus. And I think that what students may not realize, and I think faculty also may not realize, is that when you have that consistent dumping of all that cortisol, right, that can lead into other ailments. And those other ailments might be the telltale sign that something happened before that someone maybe had, not responded to or not reached out to Amy's department, et cetera. So can you speak a little bit more to what some of those ailments can look like, so persons can know that maybe the repression of it or not reaching out can result in?
So you mean for some other type of traumatic event, like people also tend to suppress their prefrontal cortex, mainly impaired, and they can't actually plan or problem solve and anything so you mean in that case, what would happen, or yeah. So yeah. So many people think in a dangerous situation, we will mainly engage in fight or flight responses. So that's kind of common sense, for most of people. But I think the freeze responses has not been getting like a lot of like attention, but like you could actually engage fight or flight experiences when you feel like you can handle, you can deal with, you still have the feeling like I can escape from this situation. I can handle, if I fight, like I may be able to like win. In that case, like we can like engage those responses. But like if we feel that like we cannot like escape like from this situation, and if they are like overwhelmed by the extreme fear, like we cannot actually like do anything like those kind of kicking, yelling, like shouting for help. So yeah, other not like just sexual assault, like being robbery, like in a situation like robbery or like other like a situation also, like we can like behave like that way. Like it's just automatic. It's not our like intentional behavior. It's not planned behavior. And we don't have time to actually calculate and estimate like all the situation to find out like, what would be the best option for that moment. So it's like I said, it's kind of instinct. So like first of all, it's important not to blame yourself. Like it's our like brain's decision. Our brain know better than us actually, like unconsciously they know like what would be the best option for our survivor. So like in that case, like it's very important not to blame ourselves. Yeah.
Yes, thank you for that. I appreciate that. I think that's what, in terms of the academic environment, I think that faculty would benefit. Again, we always hope that we have an eclectic group attending these events, but already from what's been dialogued about today, and Abby, hold me to this, I want to make sure that this goes to faculty affairs, because faculty need to know that I'm always trying to give them illustrations of it's not the same student day. So if Amy's office knows that a student has been reported something, that student's not having the same day as other students, even though the curriculum's going, the PowerPoint's running, the faculty's talking, they're preoccupied, or as Dr. Lee mentioned, they may be entering into depression or maybe having PTSD. So I think it's really critical that faculty realize how diverse their student load can be, even though the persons are present. What does that actually mean based on what someone has experienced? What kind of accommodations do persons need that have this kind of experience? And Amy, that's where I wanted to kind of go to your avenue. So if someone reports this to your office, would this come under an accommodation? So would this be parlayed to the Office of Disability Resources, or would the student, is there, because maybe they're so preoccupied by this, they're missing assignments, they're not doing their readings. And would that be something that gets covered?
So I do work closely with our Office of Equality and Diversity. I won't speak directly on the accommodations. However, I resource obviously the student out. I will put them in contact with that office and they will set up any academic accommodations that they need. If it's on an emergency basis and they've reported to police and they happen to be in my office, or say that I am down at Special Victims with them, I will probably more likely at that moment contact a professor directly, just to give a very short nondescript please excuse the student, and then to let the student follow up with the professor and then direct the student over to the Office of Equality and Diversity for those academic accommodations. And they work directly with the student and the professors to help them with whatever needs that they may have.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. I've had some of those situations occur, and I have to say that the Office of Equality and Diversity with Title IX, they do tremendous work with regards to supporting students who've been victims of sexual violence. Students have been moved from locations. For instance, they've been, I had one situation in particular where the student was assaulted in her own apartment. She was moved into an on-campus apartment where there was more security. There was a lot of accommodation also around academics. So they go, I think, above and beyond in terms of supporting students. So I really want to vouch for the work they do in supporting students who go through those particular situations. And I also want to kind of do a shout out to you, Amy, because I've worked with you in the past on some particular situations, and I know you also go above and beyond with regards to supporting students who go through those traumatic situations. I know you've gone to court at times, and you just do whatever the student needs in order to feel supported. So I do want to, I know you kind of constricting your, I guess, the area of work you're doing, but I know you also do a lot more than what you described today. So just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Catherine. I appreciate that. Yeah, I try not to get too far into it. Every student is different. All their needs are different. I try not to put any of them into a box because everyone's going to need something differently, but to kind of like follow up on Catherine as well. Yeah, we work with residential living as well. You know, we really try and pull our resources together to make sure that every student gets exactly what they need. That's not to say that like some might get missed out a little bit, but you know, everyone is different. Everything's a learning process. But yeah, we'll go as far as if they do need to be put into different housing locations to make sure that they're protected. Another thing that I do is if they need a protection from abuse order, you know, I will accommodate them down there, help them file for that, make sure that it gets served to the defendant. And I'll set up any type of accommodations or you know, if they need transportation or court accompaniment. If I personally can't go, which I really make it a point to try and personally go to any and all court hearings if I know about them with the student. If for some reason I'm stretched thin and some of the hearings happen to fall on the same day, I work closely with the district attorney's office and their victim assistance program as well. So we're always in touch with each other. We'll make sure those bases are covered and that they don't feel that they're alone to go through this process.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. And Dr. Catherine and Munson, would you be able to share the presentation? Someone asked for it, if we can send it to those who participated today. Okay, great. Okay, I see Helen asked a question about first year students offering some self-defense or safety classes, and Amy responded about DUPD offers RAD classes. Are those free, Amy? The defense
They
classes?
are for free. Obviously with the COVID and some restrictions right now, I would be lying if I told you I knew when the next class is coming up, if at all right now. But if you go online, there should be a link to find out if it's posted. If for some reason they have any trouble, Abby, if you could just put my information up, they can feel free to contact me at any time, and I'll find the answer for them directly. I just don't have it right now.
That's fine. And Helen had a question. If a student discloses to a faculty member about a sexual assault, what action should that faculty member take? That's a good question.
Well, obviously they're mandated reporters. That's big. That's the big thing. They can call the 895-222 number, and one of our dispatch will probably put them in contact with someone from Title IX or the Office of Equality and Diversity to make a report. But please know you are a mandated reporter. You need to report that.
And that's where also the distinction with the counseling center. We're mandated reporters, but in different circumstances. We're mandated reporter when, you know, it's a student who's under the age of 18 who's being abused, but it's not in the circumstance of someone who's older than 18 years old. So if they report any kind of sexual violence, we are not going to report. It's completely confidential. So I think that really is a big distinction with regards to reporting to a therapist versus reporting to a faculty or a staff person, other than a therapist.
Thank you for sharing that. Did anyone else have any questions or anything else they wanted to add?
Just me again. I just wonder if there, because I mean, the way that the three of you presented today, it was so user-friendly and it was so poignant that, are you ever invited to go to sororities, fraternities, where research has demonstrated that some of these events may transpire, more so than maybe someone who's just walking along campus, for example? I think, Dr. Catherine, you made a really good point when you put those percentages up earlier about non-student, student, male, female, et cetera. And I took some notes about that as well. So are there ever opportunities for, and again, first year orientation? I think Helen might have written in there about first year orientation, but are you ever invited to those types of groups, or even all of our student groups? Because I would most certainly support that, and let me know what I need to do on the CNHP end. But I think that that would be a valuable tool, because Amy, I don't think students know that is an accommodations event. And they would probably think, well, who's going to believe me? Or why would I report it? Or what's going to happen afterward? You know, and I think just the way you three presented today, doing it again and again and again across different groups, maybe we'll see a reduction in some of these stats, for at least for Drexel. So has that ever been an opportunity for you guys to be invited to these different groups?
Veronica, I will say this. So DUPD actually has some upcoming virtual presentations, and we just actually did one on March 30th. However, we only had one person sign up for it, but we still put it on. It was, I think it was at 6 o'clock at night, if I recall correctly. We have another one coming up on April 29th in the afternoon. And I believe, once again, you should be able to find that on our DUPD website for any upcoming events. I just started to participate with the Public Safety Department in doing this presentation to kind of give a general idea of what I specifically do. For Drexel University's public safety. But yes, to answer your question, I'm sorry, I'm a little lengthy there. We do go to fraternities and sororities when invited, more likely than not. We do presentations for faculty as well. We do freshman orientation. Those presentations, they do work, but we have to get people to attend them.
Right. And the same thing holds here, right? That's why we always have these great events. And that's why I have to end up parlaying the recording somewhere else, like faculty affairs or student affairs, or yeah, because to get them to come. And I think, Catherine, you were going to come on and share.
Yeah, no, I would say, just like Amy, if we're invited, we certainly would come, but I don't think we've ever had even this request specifically on sexual violence on campus. This is the first, and I've been at Drexel for 5 years. We get all kinds of outreach requests. This was not one of them.
So kudos to you, Abby.
Thank you. Yes, you know what's interesting? I noticed that there hasn't been any event like this. And I would love for this to be something that happens like every quarter. So students are aware of the services that Drexel provides. I think a lot of times people just don't know. And it's interesting that people have not requested this, you know? So maybe there needs to be more awareness surrounding this subject.
I know that Dr. Minson and Dr. Catherine understand that Teflon, that prefrontal cortex society that we're working with, right? Nothing applies to me. I'm Teflon. It doesn't stick to me. You don't mean me when we talk about DUI. You don't mean me when we're talking about sexual assault. You know, it couldn't happen to me, or I didn't do it, right? So, without our prefrontal cortex fusing into individuals that have a couple more years with us until that happens, that's the result, right? You have these events where people just are spontaneous and reactionary and do something, and then when they're held accountable, they're literally at a loss. They're like, I didn't know that I did that to that person or caused that reaction. And I think maybe that approach is not one of, this has been valuable, but maybe another approach is, this is how you impact. This is how the what's the word I'm looking for? Help me. But when you injure this person, this is what you've done. This is what you've created. And maybe that approach might help with people double thinking or double guessing or double acting, before they, commit something. When this is how this is restorative justice. Thank you. But, I think maybe that approach might help, as opposed to just, this is what it is and how it's defined. You're impacting someone potentially for a lifetime. And Dr. Lee, have you ever done a presentation about that or similar to that out of your office or out of your space?
I don't think we have done this kind of presentation, right, Catherine?
No.
Well, I will say the reason why I decided to pick this topic is because I actually had a conversation among some girlfriends of mine, and we were just talking about dating and consent, and just listened to some of their stories, and we started discussing. They realized that they were sexually assaulted. They didn't realize that they were put into a situation, and they felt like they had to do it. Mm-hmm. So I said, you know what, I think this would be a really great topic to talk about, especially on campus, because a lot of times things like this do happen and it's swept under the rug, and people don't know that they have these options and these resources. So I'm so happy that all the presenters were able to talk today about their roles, what they do. Hopefully maybe we'll have this conversation again, where we can get more people to participate and listen. I think this is something that should be done more frequently instead of just one time. So it's strange that, Catherine, you just said you've been here for 5 years and this is the first time you did this type of presentation.
Right. I think as I throw on my Assistant Dean of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion hat, sometimes I have to use those two M&Ms, and I'm going to write my article very soon. Who knows when I'm going to write it? But I talk a lot about M&Ms, must and mandatory, and sometimes you can't ask. You can't ask students, do you want to be a part of this? Like Amy said, one person shows up. And yes, Amy, we've done events with one person showing up and we still do it. But I think we have to put it under, we throw things up on the Blackboard shell all the time that we tell students should be a part of their curriculum education. This should be something that, the intellectual honesty form must be completed for each class. I think this is something that's a must and a mandatory, like our OSHA, virtual, sessions for OSHA. I think these kinds of things would only help, like you said, Abby, they didn't know that they had been sexually assaulted. So I just am very thankful that the three of you took the time to come out and for Abby to request that this topic happen. And I don't see this being a once and done. So I think there's multiple ways, and I saw a lot of great comments in the chat that we can move this forward. So thank you all.
Did anyone want to speak? I know you guys have been chatting. I'm reading all these comments. Did anyone want to add to the conversation? Oh, and it's also Sexual Assault Awareness Month. I didn't even realize that. Okay, so.
I actually thought that's why you picked that topic this month.
I actually did not. I didn't even, because so many different things are going. Like last month was Women's Month, so that's why I wanted to be done in March, and I didn't realize it was finals. So I said, okay, let's move it to April to give everyone enough time. But no, that's awesome though. So no, I did not even realize that. I'm so sorry. I did not though, but I'm glad that it goes with this topic that we're discussing.
I can jump in really quick. I said this in the chat already, but there's just a complete I graduated from Drexel in June of 2020, so last year, and Like I appreciate this conversation so much, and I think that conversations like this should keep happening, and I think they should have been happening. But at Drexel, there's a lack of conversations like this. It's hard to, I can, just speaking from my own experience, it was very hard to find resources for support after my own trauma. And like when I found them, they were great, and that was great. But it's like they're hidden away in this little secret place. No one wants you to find them. And then there's just not a cohesive community. So like even with education for first years, like I felt so isolated because I didn't know if anyone else also would perceive my own experience the way I perceived it. So I didn't know if I would get any empathy, for example. And that's been like 3 years now. But what like Catherine said about the healing is an ongoing process. I think it's a lifelong process. Like we're changing human beings here. But yeah, it's just there's not a cohesiveness around it at Drexel. And I could say that about a lot of things at Drexel, but I think this is one of those things. And another example I'll give, and the last thing I'll say is the OED what is fantastic for what they do in terms of addressing a situation when it arises and providing support when you are in the mix and when you're doing like maybe you're you're trying to hold your perpetrator accountable, but after it's over, like after all that's over, it's kind of like, well, what now? Like, I didn't even know about victim services, like what Amy does, until about a year ago for an entirely different reason. And so it's just kind of not this, it doesn't feel like this network of support. It kind of just feels like you're like a floating little kelp, if that makes sense. And I made it, it's great, but I think there's a lot of work to be done, so.
I just want to say thank you for sharing that. And it is really important. I think that, like Catherine, I've been here going on 5 years, and yes, every day is a learning process. I mean, we definitely need to work better together. I don't think the last year, actually I'm lying. I think that the last year kind of has helped a little bit. It's forced us to work together a little bit more during COVID. And I believe it or not, I like the virtual world that we just encounter, because I feel like people are kind of participating a little bit more. I'm not from the virtual world. I'm lucky I can even turn a computer on at times, but the student population, that's what they're all about. So if this is the way that we can get to them, then by all means, I mean, I say keep pushing forward and doing what we're doing. But yeah, I definitely agree with Camille. We do have to work harder and smarter and better together as the Drexel community to help support student survivors.
Yeah, I think it's such a huge university. There's so many different departments, and I think also building relationships amongst ourselves as staff, faculty also helps a lot, because it's because I met you, Amy, 5 years ago within a particular case that I know about those services. I don't think half of the staff, even at the counseling center, actually knows about you specifically. So it's a lot of work to just keep on spreading the words and sharing about, the resources and doing a better job with our own websites, for instance. I think that helps a lot, to be able to navigate a website that's more easier to navigate and know where to go and who does what, and having names. I think that also helps a lot.
And Camille, I'm sorry that you feel that way. I kind of feel like sometimes our voices get lost in big universities when it comes to these certain subjects. Fortunately, you know, having this discussion moving forward, we can do this more frequently so that everyone knows about the services that are provided to Drexel students. And, you know, this is something that we're just going to keep on talking about and bringing awareness. I think it's really important. But thank you for sharing.
Oh yeah, of course. Thank you for listening. And I mean, I don't want to say it's okay. It's not okay, but I'm accustomed to um, it, and not just at Drexel, just at institutions in general. That I mean, I think Drexel cares more about itself than its students, in my opinion. But I'm a student or a prior student, so I can say that.
And this is a question I have because of Catherine and Minsun. I don't know the answer to. I don't tend to ask questions I know the answers to. Are our alumni, as Camille is evidencing, are they still a part of our network? Or is there, you know, Camille graduates, nothing follows along? Do we have any kind of alumni network for student survivors?
I guess the way I think about that is, you know, for students who graduate, we do help them connect with different resources that are off campus. So we would help with that. Yeah, we never just drop a student who's seeking services, who is in need of support. We find any way we can to get them connected with the proper resources and supports.
And Veronica,
that goes for you, Camille.
and to follow up with Catherine, I specifically have worked with students going through court procedures, and they've graduated, and I will still go with them. Yeah, I'll support them as long as their court case goes on, and as long as they need assistance or want assistance. I mean, I'm grateful that I have the chief of police here that allows me to do that. Yeah, I wouldn't want to pass them on to anyone else at that point.
Well, that's good to know. I actually did not know that, Amy. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I've had a couple cases, and they have, as long as I start with them as a Drexel student, I follow through with them until the case is over. And they've allowed me to do so. So until they tell me otherwise, I'm going to continue to do that. I would also like to add that, I care about students, and I need them to know that it's extremely important, and I think that it needs to get out there that you do not have to have criminal charges filed in order to get help, in order to come out and talk to a police officer. Just because you're talking to a police officer to get facts on how the criminal process works doesn't mean that it's a report's been made. It's distinct, like you're in charge, and there's a lot of part of sexual assault that you don't feel that you've been in charge of anything. And I like to always tell the students that this is one thing, you're in control of this. You're going to control whether or not you make that police report and what happens going forward. You can make a police report and decide not to have criminal charges filed. And sadly to say, the likelihood of some of those charges being filed by our district attorney's office, especially during these last couple of years, have been very, very slim. It is a difficult road. It's a long road. It is it's a marathon. It is not a race. So if you choose to file criminal charges, You know, I will say this, Drexel really does a great job in supporting through that process. Our counseling center is phenomenal. I know that at any point, if I had a student in my office and they needed to see someone ASAP, that I could make a phone call over there and they would find a therapist to see them. So, you know, in my experience in the last 5 years, I'm so happy and honored and proud to work with some of the best therapists. And our OED office has been phenomenal too. We have some really good investigators that work, and we do work together. And every day we're learning more, and we're working harder to provide the best resources for our students. But it's a learning process, and it's great to get this feedback from students, because otherwise we're not going to be able to fix it or make it better. So we need the students to speak up and to come to these presentations and to, you know, say what they need.
I think that's also what we do at the counseling center with regards to speaking up. We're there to support students wherever they want to take this. So if it is to help them find their voice, this is something we're going to help them with. But I also wanted to add something with regards to our services. So if someone experiences or has experienced a sexual assault, we will see them that day. We always have slots on somebody's schedule who will accommodate those kinds of emergent situations. So we're not going to have a student wait for days before they be seen. So they would be priority. If it is just even to meet them for 30 or 45 minutes, but we will accommodate them that day. This is part of our protocol.
I'm kind of new to counseling service, so I'm not sure like whether we had actually like kind of workshop or group for victims, or whether we have whether we had in the past like support group, something like that. But I think like we can create something like a support group, or particularly group for like sexual assault victims, right, Kathleen?
We used to have one. Actually, I helped run that group. I think we had a hard time getting it started again, because it's difficult to, I guess, coordinate student schedules. And with the 10-week term, sometimes we don't have enough people who are able to meet at the same time on the same day. So this is an ongoing, I guess, work in progress, but we definitely used to have that group going for women.
And also I included all the speakers' emails in the chat. So if anyone has any something personal they want to ask, you can reach out to them. I know they'll be willing to share or help you with any resources. Yeah, I don't think I've seen any groups at Drexel. I know I'm in some clubs, but I do think maybe there could be like a Zoom or something, maybe like once a month, depending on people's schedule, whether they can attend, you know, for this month or next month, and just to have a continuation of just a couple people. I know it's pretty hard just to get everyone to come at the same time, but maybe you could do like one during the day and then maybe one in the evening, just depending on, you know, your schedule. But I think that'd be really helpful, so the students know that they have some resources at Drexel. Did anyone have anything else they wanted to add or share?
I want to say thank you, Abby, for putting this panel together. I've learned a lot through the process, so I very much appreciate you organizing this event.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, my son. Thank you, Amy, so much. I learned a lot as well. Trying to get to this event was very hectic, but I'm so glad that we were able to present it today. And I do found this information was very informative, and I can't wait to get the slides. I think it's something that definitely that everyone can use. And hopefully we'll have another discussion again in the next few months about this, around this topic as well. But I appreciate your time, everyone. And thank you for everyone else who registered for this event. So if no one has any questions, I mean, we can end a little early. I mean, I had it to 1 o'clock because I wasn't sure how long this would go. But Dr. Carey, did you want to add anything?
No, absolutely. I just want to thank everyone for being present. Like I mentioned, this will be recorded. This is recorded. It's available. It will be available, posted to our Drexel YouTube. And everyone that's on the call today or whoever pre-registered will get the link to that. And then those persons who want the actual PowerPoint slides, I think Dr. Minson and Dr. Catherine are going to present those. So that'll be helpful as well. But as we move this forward, or if Amy, if anything comes to mind, I know that we had Arun on here earlier, and maybe because of scheduling, he had to drop off, but he's the one who does our virtual reality presentations where the students can wear the goggles and experience different things. And I'm thinking, you know, students might appreciate having that as an event. He's always looking for topics to do new virtual realities for. So he might touch back to all three of you, some of you, to say, you know, do you think that this will be a good strategy to help reach students? I know he was on here at first, so he'll be able to get a copy of this recording as well. But I just say thank you to all three of you and everyone present.
Okay, so I'm going to end this meeting. Like I mentioned earlier, I put all the presenters' emails in this chat. So if anyone has anything they want to personally reach out to them, you can send an email to them and they'll be more than happy to help you. And yeah, have a great day.
You do the same.
Thank you.
Thank you for hosting this. Have a nice one.
Oh, thank you. You too. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thank you for hosting us. Yeah, have a good one.
Bye.